Will you join me in a spirit of prayer? Oh, gracious God, help us to become masters of ourselves so that we might become the servants of others. Take our minds and think with them. Take our lips and speak through them. Take our hands and work with them, and take our hearts and set them on fire with your spirit. Amen. A record 4.4 million Americans quit their jobs in September. That was the headline across media platforms like the Washington Post this past Friday. The Great Resignation, as it's being called, is in full swing. And journalists and economists are trying to understand why. Most of the explanations are economic, stories about, they cite poor working conditions or the lack of childcare as some of the primary drivers for why people are quitting. There's talk of a general strike. And then there's, early in the pandemic, I don't know if you remember reading about this or hearing, but Bill Gates commented that most Americans had navigated about 15 years of technological adaptation in 3 months. And I am here to testify that that is what happened at St. Paul's, because we, in effect, leapt into the future. And we've done it under the most unwelcome of circumstances. And it has left us tired. In our country, it has left people not just tired, but afraid and worried. And you know what? I'm going to say that I'm going to even just go even further and say it's not just feeling tired or afraid or worried, but honestly feeling disintegrated by this pandemic. Listening to Jesus' blunt words about what lies in the temple's near future, I cannot help but think of what we have experienced in these last couple of years. And yes, like I said a few minutes ago, that maybe there weren't actual stones that were thrown down, but metaphorically, certainly, stones have been thrown down. In the case of St. Paul's, although we are now technically open, there has been a long stretch where no one went into the building, except maybe Karen and Tommy and Mary Lou. Well, then I'm starting to add all these people, but on a consistent basis. All the groups that used to come through our doors. And what that has done, I think, is it has severely limited, we have been severely limited in the purposes for which we exist as a church at St. Paul's. Being a safe place for community and a safe place for service and learning. The season we're in has given me pause as I hear these words of Jesus again. What if we thought of this great resignation in spiritual terms? In the spiritual terms relating to purpose and vocation or calling. Yes, there are awful jobs and terrible bosses. There are brutal work conditions with little pay and no benefits. There's the crushing power of corporations. Absolutely. And I think there's something else. For nearly 2 years, we've worked really hard to carry on. doing things we never expected to have to do, and in many ways doing things that didn't offer a lot of fulfillment in the ways that we were used to. You know, making a difference to other people, being connected to other people and communities, work and actions that somehow resonated with some emotional part of our souls. You know, the kind of purpose, the kind of calling that brings with it a certain amount of personal fulfillment and joy. I wonder if the tiredness certainly that I feel, I don't know if it's because it has limited the ways that I have practiced my purpose. And I wonder if it might be the same for you and perhaps for St. Paul's. Now, I'm using purpose and vocation interchangeably. And, you know, we think of vocation in terms of, well, it's about ministry. We see it in religious terms, but, you know, it's not just about ministry. We all have callings. It's that inward voice we follow that brings healing and wholeness. And brings joy. In our Jewish friends would use the term that the purpose is to repair the world. Our Christian friends, some of our Christian friends like to use the term co-create with God. That's our purpose. And, you know, discovering and following our purpose of how to repair the world and how to co-create with God is not easy, but the journey brings with it a source of genuine joy and gratitude. And it just seems to me that the normal ways that we have practiced our purpose and vocation has been really disrupted. And so, golly, it's hard to remember joy with all that disruption. Today, Jesus' words carry me beyond just images of destruction. And I can begin to hear the promise of wholeness restored that is also found in this text. It makes me wonder that perhaps this sort of wholeness is only possible once everything else falls apart. Maybe the only way forward is making room for something new. I wonder if by allowing ourselves to go deep into what has happened to us, if this might not just build a deeper empathy in us for the world, for our neighbors. I wonder if we'll be able to see them more clearly. I wonder if we're not invited to hear these words today, not from a place of terror, but as words of promise. Even as we begin to experience worlds we perhaps have taken for granted, worlds that perhaps are collapsing around us, where stones are being thrown down, perhaps the great resignation is the first step toward a genuine spiritual renewal of purpose. Perhaps it is the beginning of what Diana Butler Bass is saying is the great reintegration. So here we are. Do you have a deeper sense of the stones being thrown down? A deeper sense than perhaps you did before? What can this mean for St. Paul's? What does it mean for you? Can you begin to hear the undercurrents of hope in Mark's gospel lesson today? What might God be inviting us, even providing for us, to bring to this time? How do you hear Jesus' familiar words today? Is there promise? Is there terror? Is there both? Amen.